Welcome back to Madison's Books. I'm Madison, and today you are watching my Reading Rush and July wrap-ups. I'm going to be recapping the Reading Rush and how it went for me, and also all of the books that I read in July, so this is going to be a long video. The Reading Rush. That was actually a really fun readathon. I would definitely do it again. For the last 4 days of the challenge, I didn't really read as much as I wanted to. The first and the third day, oh my gosh, I completely surpassed my expectations of what I wanted to read, but the last 4 days, barely even got over 100 pages in. Even with that, I still read 4 books, which I'm very happy about, even though 2 of them were audiobooks, and 1 of them was a short story that was only 40 pages. But I did finish 1 full-length book, actually reading it, and that was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. The short story that I finished, it was Snowscape by Patrick Ness, which is also the 3.5 book in the Chaos Walking series. It's an add-on to Monsters of Men, which is the last book in the series. And also the other 2 books that I read was Catching Fire by Suzanne Colins, the 2nd book in the Hunger Games trilogy, and Illuminae by Amie, Kaufman, and Kristoff, which is the 1st book in the Illuminae Files trilogy. And I listened to both Catching Fire and Illuminae on an audiobook. So for the Reading Rush, I have statistics on how well I did. I didn't really have any expectations going into this because that was my first time doing a readathon, and I had no idea how I was going to do or how much I was going to read. So I finished 4 books. I read a total of 1,151 pages, and I collected 6 badges. And with all of the books, Snowscape I gave a 5 out of 5, Clockwork Angel I gave it a 5 out of 5, Illuminae I gave it a 5 out of 5, and Catching Fire I gave it a 4 out of 5. And for the badges that I collected 6 badges, and they are a 2019 reader, read a 5-star book, which was Snowscape, Clockwork Angel, and Illuminae. Read a book with a non-human main character, and the book that I chose for that was Clockwork Angel because Tessa, the main character, she isn't exactly human, and also in Illuminae, Aiden, which is one of the main characters, he is a machine, so he's also not human. The next badge is to read over 1,000 pages, and I did that. And these last 2, they're for both BookTube and Instagram, and they are to make a BookTube video about Reading Rush and to post about the Reading Rush on Bookstagram. So those were the 6 badges that I collected, and honestly, I did much better than I thought I was going to do. And a day-by-day breakdown on how my reading went. Day 1, I read 300 pages. Day 2, I read 200 pages. Day 3, I read 316 pages. Day 4, I read 92 pages. Day 5, I read 127 pages. Day 6, I read 66 pages. And day 7, I read 50 pages. And so that all adds up to 1,151 pages for the entire week, and it averages out to 164 pages every day. That is all I have for the Reading Rush. I loved all the challenges that I participated in. Now onto my July wrap-up. So you know how in June I read 10 books, 10 to 11 books probably? Well, I started off this month. The first 2 weeks in July, I had only read 2 books. And my goal was to read at least 5 books in the month. And so I was kind of falling behind on my schedule. But then I found out the Reading Rush was going on. And I'll be like, okay, this is my chance to catch up on my reading. And so I did use Reading Rush to catch up. And I ended up reading 7 books in the month of July. Of the 7 books that I read, 2 I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and 5 I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Like I did last month, I participated in my library reading challenge, and on the app I logged all of my minutes of reading, and it told me how many hours I read during the entire month, my average reading speed at the beginning and the end of the month, and how many pages I read. In July, I read 39 hours and 16 minutes, and on July 1st, I averaged a page every 57 seconds, and on July 31st, I averaged a page every 44 seconds. The total number of pages that I read in July, I read 3,045 pages. I know how last month I read a lot of short stories. I read at least 3 of them, which was Memento, Steel Scars, and Queen Song. Those were all short stories. and this month I only read one short story, and so I read 6 full-length books. I'll go in chronological order of when I read each book, and I'll just tell you a little bit about each one. The first book that I read in July was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, and this is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series, which has 6 books in it. I really liked the story, but there wasn't really anything memorable going on. Just looking back on it, there wasn't really anything that I remember. I felt like it was kind of just the middle. Now just thinking back on it, I might change my rating to like a 3.5 out of 5 stars, just because there wasn't really anything memorable going on in the book. And looking back on the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments, there's not really anything that I remember that happened in City of Ashes. So yeah, but it was a good read. It was entertaining, but it just wasn't memorable for me. The second book that I read in July was City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. So this book, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's so amazing, and just the last 100 pages or so, oh my god, they were so good. If you've read the book, you know what I mean. Just the last fight sequence, oh my god, and all these twists were going on, and it was just an amazing story, and I did not want to put it down. It felt like the end to a trilogy, you know? I feel like the Mortal Instruments series, it's like 2 separate trilogies combined into one, and I feel like those first 3 books, they're kind of their own trilogy, and then the next 3 books are a separate trilogy, but still in the same universe, you know? Those are my thoughts about City of Glass. It was so good, and I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars once again. These next 4 books I read during the reading rush. The third book that I read in July was Snowscape by Patrick Ness. So like I said before, this is a short story. It was written for readers to read after the last book in the Chaos Walking trilogy, Monsters of Men, and it just wraps up the story, and it has an interesting new storyline told by these 2 characters that we've known from since the second book in the series, and it was so cool just to revisit the series after I finished the last book over 6 months ago. Of course, now since I finished reading the entire Chaos Walking series, I just want to see the movie. Like, I know a bunch of people want to see the trailer for the movie, and I know it was supposed to come out in March this year, but of course it hasn't, and they haven't even released a trailer. I thought that at San Diego Comic-Con they're going to release the trailer for Chaos Walking, the movie, but they didn't have a panel there, and so they didn't release the trailer, and I'm really sad about that. Now this is kind of turning into a rant about the Chaos Walking movie, but I just really want to see the movie, and Tom Holland, Daisy Ridley, 2 really good actors in a movie together. I'm a little mad about that, but Snowscape, back to that. That was a really good story, and it was really entertaining. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The fourth book that I read in July was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Before I was reading the Shadowhunter series, or the Shadowhunter Chronicles, I researched how to read the series correctly, and so I read the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments, and then I'm alternating between the Infernal Devices and the Mortal Instruments. After I finished City of Glass, I went on to read Clockwork Angel, which is the first book in the Infernal Devices series. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's set in London in the 1800s. The main character, Tessa, she doesn't know what she is. She's not really human, she's not really a warlock, she's definitely not a shadow hunter or a demon, she doesn't know what she is, and she has these magical abilities that allow her to shapeshift into different people just by holding an object of theirs. Tessa, she lives in America, but then she takes a ship to London to meet her brother there, but then she gets captured. And I can't tell you a lot about the story except that there's a lot of shadow hunters, there's a love triangle, there's a lot of romance, and a lot of action. And it was really good. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I feel like in the summer I'm just in the mood to give books 5 out of 5 stars. I really love this book. It was the great beginning to a new series. The 5th book that I read in July was Illuminae by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. Since I read Memento last month, I decided to revisit the Illuminae universe and listen to the audiobooks. I heard from other people and from other booktubers that the Illuminae audiobooks are so amazing, and so I just decided to listen to it, and of course they are amazing. I normally don't listen to audiobooks that much, but when I do listen to them, I listen to them when I go running and working out. It makes it very easy just to read a book subconsciously, and just having to listen to the story rather than read the physical book. And I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I still love it as much as the first time I read it. I love these types of books. They're just so interesting to look at, and even though I didn't have the physical copy with me, it felt like listening to a movie. The full cast just makes the audiobook so much better. It was an extraordinary experience just listening to it. The 6th book that I read in July was Catching Fire by Suzanne Colins. Catching Fire is the 2nd book in the Hunger Games trilogy. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. That was just what I thought about the book. When I first read it, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars just because it was a really good book, but I felt like the Hunger Games was better. And just listening to the audiobook, it was entertaining and it gave my mind something to do while I'm running, but it wasn't extraordinary, but it was still a really good story. Moving past the reading rush, this book I read in the last week of July. It is City of Fallen Angels by Cassandra Clare. And I love this book. It felt like a completely new series or completely new trilogy than the previous 3 books, because you know how in the first 3 books there was Valentine, and then I can't really say anything about it. The last 3 books there's this new villain, and there's a new threat to all the shadow hunters, and it's very interesting, and the book left off on a cliffhanger, and now I really want to know what happens next, but I'm reading Clockwork Prince. And so I have to get through Clockwork Prince before I can read City of Lost Souls. Yeah, but I also want to read Clockwork Prince. I also love, with the City of Fallen Angels book, how characters from Clockwork Angel make it into the storyline of City of Fallen Angels, which is very interesting. City of Fallen Angels, I completely loved it. I read over half the book in a single day, and it was just so fun to read. It was amazing. So that's all I have for my reading rush and July wrap-ups, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!